From the cold void beyond the Andromeda Rift, our scouts first detected them, pale, small, fragile forms teeming across an ocean-blue sphere. We observed with a clinical detachment of seasoned hunters, our sensors cataloging their movements, their scattered settlements, their simple technologies. They scuttled across their world with all the apparent defenselessness of a juvenile prey species, and we recorded them as such, harmless, predictable, unworthy of caution. Our assessments were thorough, precise. Probability matrices calculated their chances of survival against an organized strike, negligible. A species that could not even organize beyond local clusters could not possibly withstand our fleets. Yet, subtle anomalies began to ripple through our data streams. Small acts, seemingly trivial, hinted at a capacity for innovation beyond instinct. Humans observed each other, coordinated in ways we could barely quantify, and repaired or repurposed materials in a manner that defied simulation. The first strike was dispatched with clinical efficiency. Our hunting vessels pierced the atmosphere in silent swarms, descending with the elegance of apex predators. We expected quick compliance, fear, surrender. What we received was chaos, raw, unrefined, yet terrifyingly effective. Humans improvised defenses, converting debris into barricades, scavenging rudimentary weapons, and striking with synchronized aggression. Every encounter revealed anomalies our models could not accommodate, unpredictable tactics, unanticipated resilience, and a palpable unwillingness to yield. In our command chambers, murmurs spread like a contagion. Calculations failed. Algorithms that had predicted annihilation now struggled to keep pace with a species that seemed to learn in real time, adapting faster than reason could measure. Emotion, or whatever drove their survival instinct, was unquantifiable, a variable beyond our control. As our fleets withdrew to reassess, unease rippled through the high councils. This was no longer a simple hunt. Among the countless intelligent species cataloged in our archives, humans were an anomaly, chaotic, adaptive, terrifying. What had begun as a trivial test of superiority had become a reckoning. The galaxy, it seemed, had underestimated them, and our confidence teetered on the brink of collapse. Even as we plotted our next strike, a single unnerving truth settled across the fleets. These fragile beings might not just survive, they might prevail. The war fleets emerged from hyperslates, a river of steel and fire, their shadows falling across the turquoise orb of Epsilon Prime. From our vantage in orbit, the planet seemed almost tranquil, oceans shimmering, continents sprawling, clouds curling like smoke from a slow-burning fire. The humans were exposed, primitive by every metric our technology could measure. Submission should have been immediate, their annihilation inevitable. Yet even before the first bombardment, anomalies appeared.
Cities shimmered with defensive structures we could not predict, sprawling barricades, labyrinthine streets, and hardened shelters embedded in natural terrain. Satellites, once inert, pulsed with energy signatures that confused our scanning arrays. Human ingenuity had converted the planet itself into a weapon, turning each hill, canyon, and ruined tower into a trap. Every anticipated victory became a gauntlet. Our orbital strikes, designed to cripple their communication and infrastructure, were met with adaptations that defied comprehension. Human ingenuity improvised in real time, repurposing wreckage into makeshift artillery, using debris as shields, and coordinating counterattacks with a precision that strained even our advanced sensors. Signals we could not decode streamed across their networks, guiding resistance in patterns that seemed almost prescient. Every loss, every collapse of a human position did not demoralize them, it galvanized them. It was as if despair itself had been transformed into strategy. The more we observed, the more our confidence eroded. Commanders whispered in the halls of our warships, nervous of calculations that no longer yielded certainty. The humans were unpredictable, adaptive, and frighteningly relentless. We had assumed technology alone ensured dominance. Here, it was hope, audacity, and sheer cunning that dictated the flow of battle. The first wave of our assault faltered. Strike cruisers vanished into ambushes. Orbital weapons found targets that no scanner had marked. Tactical maneuvers designed to overwhelm were neutralized before completion. Even our most seasoned captains hesitated, haunted by the notion that these fragile beings could bend the tide of interstellar conflict. By the third orbital sweep, it was undeniable. Epsilon Prime was not a planet to be conquered, but a crucible of resistance. Humans, primitive though they seemed, were orchestrating a defense that challenged every preconception of predator and prey. Their resolve radiated from every engagement, their coordination invisible yet undeniable, their audacity limitless. We began to catalog them not as prey, but as a tactical anomaly. Every maneuver, every adaptive strategy, indicated a species that could not merely survive, it could endure and strike back with a precision that rivaled our own. Alien commanders exchanged uneasy glances across the bridge, a wordless acknowledgement spreading among the fleets. Humanity was no longer a minor inconvenience. Humanity was a force. And in the eerie silence before the next strike, as orbital cannons powered down and sensors recalibrated, a new realization spread through the ranks. Underestimating them could mean the loss of the entire campaign. The siege of Epsilon Prime had begun as a show of dominance. Now it teetered on the edge of a revelation that no fleet, no amount of firepower could ignore.
Somewhere beneath the planet's fractured cities, humans moved with purpose, preparing their next strike, and we were powerless to predict it. Even as the humans adapted to every strike, surviving against odds that should have annihilated them, a darker disruption brewed among our own ranks. In the cold void beyond Epsilon Prime, rival predator factions whispered in corridors lined with obsidian alloy, their voices laced with suspicion, ambition, and fear. Some dismissed the humans as inconsequential, arguing for riskier maneuvers that would elevate their own status in the hierarchy of command. Others cautioned restraint, warning that the species' erratic resilience could upend centuries of calculated superiority. The more these disputes festered, the more the chaos mirrored the very unpredictability that humans thrived upon. We observed from above, alien eyes scanning for signs of weakness. The humans, oblivious to our internal strife, continued their relentless improvisation. They struck at points of hesitation, exploiting the cracks in our formations as though they could sense the fissures before even we could. When an orbital cruiser hesitated to fire, a human-made projectile, or perhaps some crude but ingenious weapon, found its mark. When a fleet command faltered in indecision, ground-based human forces exploited the moment, their movements coordinated, deliberate, and terrifyingly precise. Each human victory, however minor by our measures, reverberated across the fleets. The confidence that had once radiated like a constant hum through our command centers began to waver, replaced by quiet murmurs of doubt and fear. The ripple effect was immediate. Alien morale faltered, cracks forming in the bedrock of our assumed dominance. Commanders who had once spoken with certainty now second-guessed maneuvers, recalculating, hesitating. High councils convened in tense sessions, debating strategies with a mixture of logic and dread. Some advocated for a total purge of the species, an immediate, uncompromising assault, but the dissenters argued that the humans' unpredictability could turn such an attack into catastrophe. This was not merely a difference in tactics, it was a fundamental schism in our perception of superiority. Were we truly apex predators, or had we underestimated a species whose very existence defied our calculations? Betrayal, subtle and insidious, began to blossom. Rival factions covertly withheld reinforcements, redirected resources to private agendas, and subtly manipulated intelligence to favor their own gains. Even minor acts of self-interest had a disproportionate effect. Humans, unaware of these interstellar political games, acted with a freedom and decisiveness that made them appear prescient. Every error among our ranks became an opportunity for them, every hesitation a gift. With uncanny instinct, they seized strategic advantage at multiple points across the planet, striking before we could regroup. To an alien observer, the irony was brutal. The species we had dismissed as weak now thrived on the chaos we inflicted upon ourselves. The humans' ability to capitalize on these fractures magnified with each encounter. Small squads bypassed fortified positions left inadequately defended due to internal rivalries. Ground teams repurposed abandoned weapons from skirmishes where rival factions had delayed deployment. Even when our fleets anticipated human movement, the patterns were never as predictable as our calculations demanded. They moved like a single entity, yet remained unburdened by our endless political maneuvering, a paradox we could neither solve nor contain. Our high command grew restless. Whispers of mutiny and intrigue filled command bridges. Captains who had once led with absolute authority now hesitated, watching one another, questioning loyalties. Strategic decisions that should have been unified fractured under the weight of distrust. And as our internal divisions deepened, humans pressed forward, oblivious, almost naive in their cosmic ignorance. Their victories, small yet cumulatively devastating, eroded the very foundation of our assumed dominance. The irony of it was unmistakable. What should have been a straightforward conquest was now a protracted struggle, shaped as much by our own failings as by their ingenuity. Humans did not know or care about the cosmic stakes at play. They did not calculate political advantage or weigh interstellar reputations. They reacted, improvised, adapted, and survived. And in doing so, they transformed every act of betrayal within our ranks into a weapon that struck deeper than any of our artillery could. In the shadows of our own discord, humans became more than prey. They became a force that exploited not only their immediate environment, but the very flaws embedded in our civilization. Every strategic misstep by a predator faction became a lesson in adaptability for the humans. Every act of ambition, hesitation, or deceit within our ranks sharpened their survival instinct. It was as if the chaos we had sown internally had been absorbed by the humans themselves, turning our mistakes into catalysts for their victories. Alien commanders, once confident in supremacy, now spoke in hushed tones. "They anticipate us," one whispered, not knowing if it was awe or fear that colored the statement. Across the fleets, the acknowledgement was unanimous. The humans we had dismissed as primitive were reshaping the battlefield through nothing more than instinct, audacity, and relentless adaptation. And as we braced for the next engagement, the truth settled in like a cold shadow over the command decks. The species we had once hunted as easy prey had become the mirror reflecting the rot in our own alliances. Every step we planned, every maneuver we executed, was now vulnerable, not because of the humans' foreknowledge, but because of the fractures within ourselves. The siege of Epsilon Prime had evolved.
What began as a straightforward conquest had become a complex ballet of intrigue, betrayal, and survival. And somewhere below, hidden among ruined cities and labyrinthine defenses, humans moved with a purpose that no observer, no algorithm, no alien command structure could predict. The predators who had once laughed at their fragility now faced a horrifying possibility. They might lose, not to superior strength, not to overwhelming firepower, but to the combination of human ingenuity and the chaos sown within their own ranks. And in that darkness, a single unspoken question echoed across the fleet. Had we underestimated them entirely, or had we simply created the conditions for our own undoing? From orbit, the human response began to crystallize, forming patterns that defied every model we had developed. At first, they seemed scattered, small bands moving with desperation, improvising as though their survival depended on instinct alone. But then leaders emerged, individuals among them who radiated a force we could not quantify, directing their kind with audacity and clarity. They coordinated strikes across cities, synchronized defensive positions, and anticipated our maneuvers with a precision that stunned even our most experienced observers. No algorithm could predict them. No strategy matrix could account for their adaptability. These emerging leaders were not the strongest, nor the most heavily armed. They possessed something subtler, something alien in its implications: vision. From hidden vantage points, they orchestrated counterattacks that turned our aggression into vulnerability. Buildings rigged as traps, improvised artillery, and ambushes that appeared spontaneous were in fact carefully designed. Their communication, though primitive to our sensors, functioned as a symphony of signals we could not fully decode. It was as if every human on the battlefield were attuned to the other's intentions, moving as one, yet without the rigid hierarchies that governed even our fleets. We watched skirmish after skirmish, expecting eventual collapse. And yet, each small victory, each tactical success, each thwarted ambush radiated far beyond its immediate impact. Human morale soared with every triumph. Their victories were not just survival. They became legend. Stories passed from one cluster to another, inspiring others to act with equal daring. Entire populations adapted, imitating the bold strategies of their leaders, refining them, and striking back in ways that confounded our calculations. Resistance spread like a contagion, and we began to see a larger pattern forming, a vanguard that was no longer a mere defensive measure, but the spearhead of a species redefining its role in the galaxy. The more we cataloged their actions, the more evident it became. This was not randomness. The humans exhibited a level of strategic creativity, coupled with resilience,
that rivaled even our most advanced war fleets.
Their improvisation in the heat of combat, their capacity to learn instantly from mistakes, and their willingness to risk everything for the sake of a goal we could not fully comprehend made them unpredictable in the extreme. The more we tried to model them, the less accurate our predictions became. And yet, it was not only their tactics that unsettled us. Their courage, raw and unflinching, seemed to radiate through the battlefield, a force that shifted the momentum of every encounter. Where one would expect despair, we observed defiance. Where our firepower should have cowed them, we saw audacity. In every skirmish, humans seemed to feed off the very danger that should have destroyed them. It was a phenomenon we could not quantify, an energy that defied the laws of probability, transforming hopeless scenarios into opportunities for triumph. From our orbital stations, we began to map not just their actions, but their spirit. Each human strike, each daring maneuver was a statement. We will endure, we will fight, and we will adapt. Their spirit was contagious, spreading from one battalion to another, from one settlement to the next, unifying populations that had once been fractured by fear and uncertainty. Their audacity reshaped the battlefield itself. Our advanced fleets found themselves constantly adjusting, reacting, improvising, always a step behind the humans who, in their apparent chaos, moved with terrifying purpose. Our fleets catalogued every engagement, recording tactical anomalies and behavioral data, yet the truth was unavoidable. Humans were no longer prey. They were a tactical enigma, a force whose ingenuity and courage challenged the very assumptions of interstellar conflict. Where we had expected defeat, we now encountered strategy. Where we had expected retreat, we now encountered initiative. The human vanguard had emerged as a symbol of resistance, and the longer we observed them, the clearer it became that the species we had once dismissed as fragile and insignificant had transformed into a phenomenon beyond our understanding. Alien strategists convened across command decks, uneasy murmurs spreading like static through communication channels. "They adapt faster than we can calculate," one whispered. "They anticipate our hesitation," another added, tone edged with disbelief. Commanders who once dismissed the humans now leaned forward over control panels, tracing patterns they could not fully decode, acknowledging that the species below them had redefined the meaning of resilience. The humans did not merely survive, they challenged assumptions, exposed weaknesses, and forced our fleets to reconsider the foundations of every strategic doctrine we had ever relied upon. And in the midst of this calculated chaos, the human vanguard pushed further. They struck at critical junctions, exploiting our slow responses, dismantling supply chains and ambushing patrols with a combination of creativity and precision that blurred the line between plan and improvisation. With every encounter, they reinforced not only their tactical position, but their legend. It was as if the battlefield itself recognized them, responding to their audacity and feeding back their resilience into every action. We began to catalog not only their victories, but their very essence, their audacity, their fearlessness, their unwillingness to bow in the face of annihilation. Humanity was no longer a subject for observation. It was an anomaly demanding respect, awe, and fear. In the span of a few short weeks, the species we had deemed insignificant had become an unsolvable equation, a force that required constant attention, constant adjustment, and constant vigilance. And as orbital satellites scanned the horizon for the next maneuver, one truth became undeniable. The human vanguard was only the beginning. Their leaders, their strategies, their courage, all of it pointed towards a future in which humans would no longer merely survive, they would dictate the terms of engagement. And somewhere below, moving unseen among ruined cities and hidden fortresses, the humans prepared for their next strike, a maneuver that no predator fleet could anticipate. In the silence of our command bridges, as fleets recalibrated and sensors strained to interpret the chaos, one realization spread across the ranks. The prey we had dismissed had become the spearhead of something far greater, and our dominance, our supremacy, was no longer guaranteed. The human vanguard had risen, and the galaxy would tremble beneath its force. The humans, once scattered and cornered beneath the shadow of our fleets, began to dictate the tempo of battle.
Where previously we set the pace, descending from orbit, striking with precision, overwhelming them with superior technology, they now forced us to react. Each human settlement became a node of resistance, each loss a lesson, each retreat an opportunity to strike back with renewed ingenuity. Our algorithms, designed to anticipate adaptive responses, faltered. Probability matrices collapsed under the weight of their unpredictability. No model, no calculation, no centuries of experience could account for the fluidity of their strategy. From multiple orbital positions across Epsilon Prime and surrounding systems, we observed humans coordinating assaults with an efficiency that surpassed expectation. Ground forces synchronized with orbital raiders, improvising tactics in real time. Structures once destroyed were repurposed into defensive strongholds. Supply caches lost to bombardment became traps for our patrols. Each maneuver, each adjustment, radiated an intelligence that was not simply strategic, it was instinctive, almost preternatural.
Even when faced with overwhelming odds, humans moved without hesitation, using loss as a tool rather than a limitation. Across the galaxy, our fleets recorded their victories, unable to ignore the growing legend. Stories of human defiance spread among predator species, small skirmishes that ended in the retreat of superior fleets, sabotage operations that decimated supply lines, ambushes that annihilated our patrols before we could react. Alien commanders spoke in hushed tones across the void. "They are not merely surviving," one muttered. Admiration mixed uneasily with fear, for the humans' triumphs were not born of sheer power, but of audacity and adaptation. Their resolve was as dangerous as their improvised weapons. We began to observe patterns emerging, a rhythm beneath the chaos. Humans were learning faster than we could calculate, adjusting tactics not only to immediate threats, but to predicted future scenarios. Every encounter became a test of our assumptions about control, superiority, and inevitability. Where we once dictated the terms of engagement, we now reacted, our ships forced to respond to improvisation, anticipation, and sheer audacity. The predator fleets that had once stalked them with confidence now moved cautiously, almost reverently, wary of traps we could not detect and strategies we could not model. Their resilience was contagious. Within their ranks, humans shared knowledge instantaneously. Lessons gleaned from one encounter applied across multiple theaters. Retreat was transformed into maneuver, loss into opportunity, and fear into resolve. Each successful operation reinforced collective morale, embedding audacity into the species' very DNA. From our orbital vantage, it was difficult to comprehend. These fragile beings had turned adversity into mastery, chaos into a weapon, and desperation into a strategy that reshaped entire systems. The humans' defiance transcended survival. It became spiritual, almost ritualistic. Even as entire fleets surrounded their colonies, attempting to crush their resistance, the humans endured, adapted, and fought back. It was not simply a matter of survival. They seemed to relish the struggle, transforming it into an assertion of will against forces that dwarfed them in strength, technology, and reach. Observing them, one could sense a force beyond calculation, the desire not merely to exist, but to shape their destiny, to impose their ingenuity upon the universe. We, the supposed apex predators, began to feel a creeping unease. The arrogance that had guided us through centuries of conquest was eroding. Every human victory, no matter how minor, chipped away at our certainty. Fleets that had once moved with flawless coordination now paused, recalculated, second-guessed. Commanders whispered of contingency after contingency, as if preparing for eventualities humans could not yet conceive, and yet somehow the humans anticipated them anyway.
Our dominance, our presumed inevitability, was slipping through our grasp. Across multiple systems, human operations synchronized like an unseen clockwork. Ambushes destroyed critical supply chains. Communication networks were intercepted or manipulated. Even when outnumbered, humans moved with the precision of a species that had anticipated every possible obstacle, every potential countermeasure. It was as though their collective intelligence extended beyond individual minds, a shared consciousness of survival and audacity that could not be quantified. Each victory reverberated across the galaxy, a challenge to every predator species that had ever assumed superiority. As our forces recalibrated, a chilling realization took root in every command bridge. Humans were no longer merely adaptive. They had become the authors of the conflict itself. The battlefield conformed to their ingenuity rather than the other way around. They no longer fought simply to survive, they fought to impose order upon chaos, to turn adversity into dominance. The tide had shifted, and with it, the galaxy's understanding of the species they had long dismissed as fragile. Even our analysts, trained to anticipate, adjust, and predict, confessed unease. They are beyond comprehension, one admitted. Every engagement erodes the rules we believed universal. Across our fleets, the whisper of fear mingled with awe. We had underestimated them once. The humans had not only survived, they had become architects of the battlefield, reshaping reality itself with courage, strategy, and an audacity that no species, no matter how technologically advanced, could match. And as human forces prepared for yet another engagement, their combined assault spreading across planets and orbital installations alike, one inescapable truth emerged. We were no longer hunters, we were participants in a contest we could not predict, a battle in which the very rules of warfare had been rewritten by a species we had once deemed inconsequential. The tide had turned, and for the first time, we glimpsed the possibility that the humans might not merely endure, they might prevail. In the still moments before the next strike, the fleets paused, sensors scanning for threats that could no longer be anticipated. Somewhere below, hidden in ruined cities, scorched plains, and subterranean networks, humans moved with purpose, improvising, coordinating, and preparing to assert their dominance. And in that silence, the predators understood the terrifying truth. This contest, once assumed to be ours, was now defined by the ingenuity, resilience, and unrelenting will of a species we had once thought fragile. The turning tide was no longer a moment in time, it was a revolution, and the galaxy would never be the same. The horizon of Epsilon Prime trembled beneath the convergence of fire and steel. Our fleets, honed through centuries of conquest, advanced in disciplined waves, their immense shapes blotting out the stars.
We, the apex predators of countless systems, were certain of victory. Yet beneath that certainty lurked unease, subtle but undeniable. Across the planet, humans moved as if anticipating every strike, turning each calculated maneuver into a test we were forced to react to, rather than initiate. The first engagement shattered expectation. Orbital bombardments intended to decimate human strongholds were met with improvised countermeasures that defied all prediction. Crude, hastily repurposed technology, shields, energy redirection devices, and kinetic traps intercepted our volleys. Every strike we launched was absorbed, deflected, or transformed into a counterattack that struck at our most vulnerable vessels. Their ingenuity was terrifying in its simplicity, their adaptation almost instantaneous. It became clear, humans were not merely responding, they were learning, evolving, and exploiting weaknesses we had assumed immutable. Across multiple battlefronts, asymmetrical warfare became their weapon. Where we concentrated firepower, humans dispersed into unpredictable clusters. Where we attacked with overwhelming technology, they struck at supply lines and communication nodes with precision that rivaled our most advanced targeting systems. Each encounter revealed a species whose rate of adaptation exceeded even the most sophisticated algorithms we had deployed. Every failed assumption, every miscalculated strike, reinforced the growing truth. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and terrifyingly clever. From our command stations, we observed with a mixture of awe and dread. Fleet captains who had once laughed at the fragility of the species now hesitated, their movements cautious, their orders measured. Analysts recalibrated predictions constantly, yet the models never matched reality. For every advantage we assumed, humans found a counter. For every weakness exposed, they turned it to their benefit. In the vast expanse of space and planetary surface, humans became architects of chaos, designing battles in real time, their ingenuity magnified by desperation and courage. As the battle intensified, entire fleets found themselves hemmed in by improvisation they could not anticipate. Strike cruisers fell to ambushes hidden beneath ruined cities. Orbital satellites were commandeered by makeshift jamming devices that rerouted our targeting systems. Even the most seasoned commanders could not comprehend the patterns, the logic behind the humans' seemingly chaotic tactics. It was as if each human acted with instinctive clarity, guided by a collective intelligence that defied analysis. We watched as humans transformed despair into opportunity. Entire battalions, cornered and outnumbered, emerged victorious through daring maneuvers that our simulations had declared impossible. Their use of the environment, ruined buildings, narrow valleys, abandoned machinery, became a force multiplier.
They weaponized their limitations, converting scarcity into tactical advantage. And always their resilience radiated, a force we could neither predict nor suppress. A grim realization spread among our command ranks. We had underestimated them for too long. Confidence, the constant companion of predators, began to erode. Orders once issued with certainty were delayed, recalculated, and second-guessed. We had assumed supremacy, yet humans proved that no amount of technology, firepower, or experience could guarantee dominance over a species so audacious, so adaptive, and so unyielding. Amidst the chaos, grudging respect took root. Humans were no longer merely survivors, They were architects of their destiny. Each victory they achieved was not only a tactical success, but a statement of intent. They would not merely endure, they would shape the universe according to their will. Their ingenuity and courage became a mirror reflecting the limitations in our own civilization, a reminder that strength alone does not define supremacy. The final clashes unfolded with cinematic intensity. Fleets collided in space above scorched cities, kinetic and energy weapons converging in brilliant arcs of destruction. Humans struck with precision, targeting command nodes and critical infrastructure. Each move was calculated, yet improvised, seemingly random, yet devastatingly effective. Where we anticipated retreat, they advanced. Where we expected hesitation, they seized the initiative. The battlefield had become a stage for their ingenuity, and we were forced to follow the choreography they dictated. Even in the heart of chaos, humans displayed a terrifying composure. Leaders emerged from the rubble of failed defenses, coordinating counterattacks that struck at both fleet and ground positions. Improvised weapons harnessed raw energy, turned against our own technological superiority. Entire battalions adapted mid-battle, learning from mistakes instantly, teaching one another without the benefit of our communication networks. Their resilience was contagious. Each victory inspired new acts of audacity, reinforcing the momentum they had seized. From our observation posts, awe mingled with fear. The predator fleets, once embodiments of confidence and control, now moved in reaction rather than initiative. Each encounter chipped away at our arrogance, forcing a reconsideration of what it meant to dominate in a galaxy teeming with life. Humans, the species we had once dismissed as fragile, were reshaping the rules of engagement, challenging our assumptions, and redefining the nature of survival and cunning. As the battle reached its crescendo, the realization was undeniable. The final clash would determine more than mere victory or defeat. It would define the limits of adaptability, resilience, and strategic ingenuity in the galaxy. Humans were no longer prey.
They were equals in a contest of survival and strategy, a species capable of mastering circumstance in ways that even the most advanced predators could not fully comprehend. And in the quiet moments between assaults, as fleets recalibrated and sensors strained to track the humans' next moves, one truth spread across every command deck. The architects of chaos below were readying their next strike. The humans were poised to transform the battlefield again, to seize momentum, and to prove that their audacity was a force no technology, no experience, and no predator could contain. The clash of titans had begun, not as a battle of strength alone, but as a war of ingenuity, will, and unrelenting resilience. And as the first human counteroffensive emerged, bright and deadly across the ruined horizon, the predators understood the terrifying reality. The war for supremacy was no longer ours to command. The smoke of battle hung low over Epsilon Prime, swirling across fractured cities and scorched plains like a dark veil. The dust settled, revealing the aftermath of a war that no predator had anticipated. Entire fleets of our most advanced ships lay in ruin, shattered across orbital corridors and planetary surfaces, casualties of a species we had once dismissed as fragile. Humans, small, unarmed, seemingly insignificant, had endured against odds that should have obliterated them. Their victories were neither elegant nor conventional, often chaotic, at times reckless, yet devastatingly effective. From our vantage above, scanning the remnants of the battlefield, we cataloged their triumphs with a mixture of awe, disbelief, and something closer to fear. Each ruined cruiser, each scorched outpost, each improvisational trap-turned lethal weapon bore testimony to a species whose ingenuity could not be predicted, measured, or contained. The humans had taken chaos and transformed it into opportunity, despair into strategy, and near-certain defeat into survival. Their methods defied every model we had constructed, every algorithm we had trusted. They had not merely endured, they had mastered the art of adaptation. Observers across predator fleets whispered in disbelief. They should not have survived, one admitted, voice tight with awe. Another echoed, they are unlike anything cataloged. In every system where human resistance had touched, the story of their audacity spread, reaching even the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Their victories were not just tactical, they were symbolic, a proof that adaptability, courage, and relentless will could rival the might of even the most advanced civilizations. We cataloged not just their actions,
but their essence. Humans possessed a resilience that transcended survival instinct. It was an audacious, almost spiritual defiance of inevitability. Their victories radiated a raw energy, hope, determination, ingenuity, that no weapon could suppress, no fleet could crush.
Even among predator observers who had once hunted them with cold calculation, a grudging respect took root. For the first time, many admitted the unthinkable. This species was extraordinary, a force that could shape events on a galactic scale, and nothing in our experience could fully anticipate their next move. The galaxy had underestimated them. From distant systems to the ruins of conquered worlds, civilizations that had counted humans as weak or inconsequential began to take note. Their story would ripple through the stars as both a warning and an inspiration. Where once the predators ruled with certainty, now hesitation and awe mingled in command centers. Where once survival alone had been the measure of a species, humans demonstrated that courage, creativity, and unyielding audacity could elevate a species beyond expectation, even against impossible odds. As we traced their movements across the remnants of Epsilon Prime, it became clear humans had redefined the rules of engagement, not by overwhelming force, but by the relentless application of will and ingenuity. Their victories were not only a testament to skill, but to character, a reflection of a species unwilling to bow to inevitability. Each improvised defense, each daring counterattack, each seemingly reckless maneuver revealed a species capable of transforming adversity into mastery. And so the echoes of humanity spread, carried across space like a resonant pulse. Predators and observers alike recorded not merely their military successes, but the broader truth. Humans were an anomaly in the galaxy, a species whose survival defied expectation and whose spirit challenged the hierarchy of power itself. In the quiet aftermath, as we scanned the horizon and counted the cost of what had been wrought, one reality settled across every observation deck, every command bridge, every analytical terminal. We had witnessed something unique. Humans were more than survivors. They were innovators, strategists, and symbols of defiance. They had endured when annihilation seemed certain, prevailed when prediction failed, and inspired awe in those who had once assumed supremacy. Their story would echo across civilizations, a cautionary tale to predators and a beacon of hope to the underestimated. In that stillness, above the ruined landscapes and broken fleets, a single thought crystallized among every observer. The humans we had dismissed as fragile were not only alive, they were immortalized in the consciousness of the galaxy. Their courage, ingenuity, and indomitable will would reverberate across time and space, a testament to a species whose very existence had rewritten the definition of resilience. The galaxy would never forget them.